Let's go to Stephen Shearer. He's a former CEO of Facebook for Australia and New Zealand. This is a very heavy-handed approach, Stephen. What's behind it, do you think? What's the play?
Good morning. I think the play is Facebook and the government clearly have come to a loggerhead, and Facebook hasn't been able to shift the government to their position, which is they think not enough value is being placed on the value that Facebook gives to news organizations. And they've decided to kind of scare the horses here by showing the Australian government, hey, if you don't do what we want to do, we'll just pull down news altogether, and therefore we won't be covered by this code.
The code, it says, is unworkable. In your experience, what is the specific bit there that is so unworkable? Is it the forced arbitration?
Well, obviously Facebook can speak for themselves about what they think is unworkable. I think it seems like there's two things. Maybe there's one that they speak more strongly about. So one is they don't feel the value of Facebook to news is recognized in the mechanism that's being set up. They think that there's quite a bit of value in that, yet the way the arbitration mechanism is set up, that is not valued highly enough. In contrast, the arbitration mechanism sets up that it values the value of news to Facebook. And Facebook feels like that's disbalanced, and they're worried that if they get shoved into these arbitration proceedings, which are mandatory, that they'll wind up with a whole bunch of unfair results. At least that's their version.
Stephen, it's become apparent this morning that it's not only news sites that cannot be accessed through Facebook, but we're talking about Fire and Rescue New South Wales, South Australian Health. There's a domestic violence page. There's a government body that cannot be accessed. That is a very blunt instrument. Is that a mistake?
I think I think Facebook may eventually regret this day. I think this is something that is going beyond just normal commercial negotiations. I think this throws a monkey wrench or worse into Australian democracy. And you point out some real practical implications with accessing, essential information for people to go about their lives in Australia as citizens. In the short term, it's a problem. In the long term, it's an even bigger problem. And I do posit what if this was a Chinese company and not an American one doing the same thing? We would be up in arms as a sort of attack on Australian democracy. Yet, here we are. And so, I think every Australian, this is more than just your news feed not having, some of your favorite news in it. This is, it's really drilling into the heart of how we share information in a free democracy like Australia. And I think Facebook's not being a good corporate citizen by taking this action.
It has exposed itself in many ways, hasn't it? Because Facebook in the past has been unwilling to or unable to combat the fake news phenomena. But it showed here that it can overnight, literally, stop those feeds. I mean, doesn't it ring hollow, that argument that it can't or won't do anything about fake news?
Well, I mean, this is a complex issue. There's no question that Facebook's only part of the solution. They are not. We shouldn't expect them to solve everything on their own. But I think Facebook's taking some actions that probably are running counter to, like you suggest, that some of the things they're saying that they want to achieve. And this is one of those. But clearly, Facebook believes that this issue in Australia is a big enough battle that they have to win, and they're willing to, as I say, kind of scare the horses to try to do it. That they're willing to take that risk.
Just as a technical point, when you go to these pages, it says no posts yet. It looks like all the content has been deleted. Would it have been deleted in the event of a deal eventually being done? Would all that content reappear?
I would think so. Certainly Google has done a few deals in the past few days. That's made headlines. They're doing deals with some of the big Australian news organizations as well as News Corp globally. Facebook, I'm sure, is trying to negotiate the same things. I don't know where those negotiations are at, but clearly they're not as far advanced as Google. When that happens, you may find in the coming days that suddenly everything's back to normal and all that content just reappears. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
And how will it play out, Stephen? I know you don't have a crystal ball there, but what's your sense of things?
Well, thus far, I think the government's been pretty strong. The regulator certainly has a firm point of view. And then, Facebook and Google have been saying some pretty strong things, and here we see an action from Facebook. Google didn't turn off search or hasn't turned off search yet, and hopefully that won't happen. But Facebook here, they have turned off news to an extent. So we've seen a big gun come out and get fired, and that alone I think is surprising to me. It's disappointing and probably a little surprising. Where's it going to go? It's hard to say. I mean, there's literally billions, hundreds of billions of dollars tied up in this in terms of value for the big tech guys. And so this is not a small fight. This is a long-term. This is a big fight. And so they really do feel they need to win it. And Mark Zuckerberg is a very, determined and stubborn person. So, we could see this drag out for some time.
Stephen Schiller, appreciate your time.
My pleasure.